camera's got squashed. Happy 420. How are we all doing? Oh, that's not gonna do it. Can't remember how to work this thing. Da da da. There we go. Oh no, lost it. 2 seconds, guys. I did preload this, but it changes the settings every time I restart the goddamn thing. Right, sweet. How the devil are we, folks? Are you having a good 420? What have you been up to? That looks about right. That'll do. Sweet. How do I load the chats? Multi-stream. Sweet. Happy 420. Anyway, I have actually, I think, done this correctly this week. Hopefully, we'll find out in a minute when I go and click through to it. But I've preloaded a few little visuals and on-screens that I wanted to show you guys. I'm gonna kick these headphones out of the way. Do apologize for the lateness of the stream as well, by the way, guys. The Green Party event ran a little bit long. Right, how's that looking? I've adjusted the fonts as well on the comment box in an attempt to make it a bit more readable for you guys at home, so you can actually read the comments as well. But they seem a bit overly comically large. I'm not sure how the hell we reset the settings on this. I do love getting to grips with new technology. All right, what is it? It is a chat box. Can I? Nope, can't change settings while I'm live. There you go, guys. It's gonna be very big words today, so yeah, this will be interesting. But anyway, guys, as I said, I've preloaded a few little screens. I'm gonna test it live here, and it's not gonna work. Oh, it is working. Ooh, perfect. Perfect. Oh yeah, there you go. I've preloaded, like I said, a load of different windows talking about the history of 420. This is something that I've wanted to do for a while. I think I actually wrote a blog about this, maybe way back when in 2017, 2018 maybe, on the history of 420. There's quite a lot of misconceptions and quite a lot of sort of myths out there and half-truths. So I'm just going to change my note sheet. I've just realised that's my notes for the Green Party. That's done, pardon me. Here we have 420 notes, that's a bit better. Yeah, so we're going to discuss, like I said, the history of 420. I've then got a little video that I did want to queue up and show you guys as well, which is Durham 420, which is an event that we put on a couple of years ago, and I just wanted to put to show you guys the kind of thing that can happen, the kind of 420 events that do occur in the UK. Don't know how many of you will have had the opportunity to go to many of the events. Obviously today is very weird. It's the first time in a very long time that there hasn't been events on. We were building to quite a good level for a while there. I think we got to 12 or 13 events in 2019, which was the most that we'd kind of ever had, and they were in really diverse places as well, right across the country. Happy 420, Weefy. Happy 420, Ellen. Adrian, happy 420. Hope you're all doing well, folks. Right, so what we are going to do is I wanted to show you this. Right, so this, if I click on it on the right page, this is 420waldos.com. Waldos, I don't know if you may have heard the sort of expression before. Waldos was the name that 5 college students gave themselves because they would hang around and meet sort of, I can't actually remember fully, and I'm looking at the wrong window, what the reason for what they call themselves Waldos. It was just an amalgamated name that was kind of given to them, I think. But 420 came from these 5 group of friends. And so the cultural history of it that is completely broken down on this site, like I said, 420waldos.com, shows you everything really that you need to know about the history of who these guys are. Luckily they've kind of come out of the woodwork in more recent years to try to reclaim the story, because there's a lot of people seeking to kind of whitewash and appropriate 420 and be able to take kudos and credit for its creation. Yes, you have some really old school pictures of these guys and like a breakdown of a really interesting time in the culture of like them being related culturally sort of being related to like the Grateful Dead and the movements around like LSD and stuff like that. And so basically the story goes that they were given a treasure map effectively from a US Coast Guard, and this guy had grown a big crop of weed out somewhere, and had kind of got really paranoid, didn't want to go and harvest it. Kind of this map got passed to these youngins. They kind of made this plan to meet at 420 at the Louis Pasteur statue, the French scientist who sort of came up with the concepts of vaccines and came up with pasteurization of milk. So they'd meet there, and what they did is they decided to then go on this sort of road trip, and they went searching for it, and they had sort of a real good time with it. I don't think it's documented as to whether they found the crop or not, but they did enjoy obviously the experience. And then what they were doing for the weeks afterwards was kind of saying 420 Louis as a way of sort of saying to each other, let's smoke and go and do something. And it became then a social keyword, a buzzword, that then eventually, once they lost the Louis, it just became 420. And then obviously with the Grateful Dead coming from a similar area around the Bay Area, that kind of cultural code word, that kind of idiom was passed around. And then as the Grateful Dead kind of moved around, same with LSD and acid culture and everything that formed around that sort of time, or after that time and therein, sort of perpetuated this. And then it obviously inked into popular culture, and then from there it sort of went out to the wider global culture. How you doing, Phil? Sorry that you're doing well. Hope you're having a quiet 420. Yeah, so that's kind of the sort of where the history of it. There's some really interesting sort of misconceptions around it. There's some people that will say 420 is a California sort of police dispatch code. They'll say 420 when there's reports of somebody smoking cannabis. This isn't true. It relates to something around houses, I believe. 420 again is also not like a penal code, so it's not linked to the sort of the penal system at all. It's not related to Holland. There's a few sort of myths out there that try to claim that 420 came from Europe, when it comes from this region, and that's sort of the lineage and the history of the narrative, the origin, of 420. Some people misassociate it with Bob Marley. There's an interesting sort of narrative that people point to with a Bob Dylan song, Rainy Day Woman, where he says 12 and 35 sort of repeatedly a few times in choruses, and 12 times 35 is 420. But maybe a coincidence. It's hard to say. But I also want to show you this as well, because this is cool. This is the first sort of mass printed cultural reference of 420. It's kind of wrong with what they're saying on it, but the kind of cartoon, the graphic, this is in, I think it was in I've made a note of this somewhere. I think it's 1991 High Times. But it's just such a, I don't know, a really cool sort of thing. But it's weird that the clocks themselves are not at 420. That was just the thing that I kind of wanted to show you guys, because it was just a bit to me. But the other thing I wanted to show you guys was this. I don't know if the sound's going to work on this actually. No, will it not? I don't know how to edit that setting. So, looks like I can't show you that. This is available on the Durham City Cannabis Club YouTube page, and it is definitely worth a look. It's on the, I think it's on the Simpa Life Facebook page as well, because I shared it today as being the anniversary. But it's just a 4-minute sort of video walking around and showing you a Durham 420 event that we put on, and I'd say it's well worth a watch, because it gives you an idea of the kind of cultural events that people are sort of trying to create in the spaces that they want to have to be able to consume in. Oh wait, that's something else for later. But yeah, check out 420 Waldos, which is WALDOS as spelled here. But yeah, well worth reading into the history and to looking at this. It's pretty cool. It is pretty cool. Right, how do I get you back on the main scene? There we go. So, my sound's very quiet. Let's try and turn it up a bit. How is that? Is that a bit better for you? We had this problem last week as well. Interesting, Adrian. If you could drop me a link to that, I'd be very interested to read that for sure. Always happy to educate myself sort of further on this subject. So what's people been up to at 420 then? I saw there was actually quite a lot of people in Hyde Park. There's a few people went to, is it Platts Field in Manchester, where they typically do their 420 event as well. Usually they do it on the Sunday, either before or around 420. So it was interesting that quite a few people came out. But yeah, it's great to see not in spite, well, I suppose kind of in spite of what's going on with COVID regulations and whatever else, that people are still choosing to organise. Or really come together and socialise, I suppose, because we can't really organise. This is why there wasn't any sort of too many official events. I think there was one went off in Cornwall today, and probably a few of the quieter ones here and there, but there wasn't the usual kind of real public fervour and push for it. Thank you very much. I shall copy that out so I don't lose it. Thank you very much, Adrian. Oh, you kidding? I can't copy out of this thing. Well, that's not fair. Come on. That's not cool. It doesn't let me copy it. I'll have a Google of it anyway. But much appreciated. Shout out to our one Twitch viewer as well. Thank you very much for supporting a very, very new channel that I don't really quite know how to understand. I know when I press a button here to go live on YouTube and Facebook, I appear on your lovely screens. When I go to look at the app itself or the platform, it's all very whoa. Yeah, I agree. Not fair. Not fair. Considering this is a paid service as well, that I then can't copy and paste the comments out. Not happy with that. Although saying that, it is a very complicated system, so I imagine somewhere there'll be a setting that I just have not clicked on. Happy 420, Steve. Hope you are keeping well, brother. Hope you've had a lovely day. I apologise if I'm a bit kind of lackluster. We've just done the Green Party drug policy panel of Beyond the Law and Stigma, talking about how we can empower certain communities that have been marginalised by prohibition and by the war on drugs, and what sort of steps can be taken. It's an incredibly interesting panel. So I was speaking alongside Dr. Sunil. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head. In fact, I don't remember many people's. There's Dr. Yuandi. There was Dr. Sunil. There was Nathaniel Loxley from the British Hemp Association and Vitality Hemp. And there was Cleo Lake as well, who is the PCC candidate for Avon and Somerset. And to hear her speak and to see her interactions with the event was incredibly interesting and telling. I mean, if she's got half a shot in Bristol, if someone like her could be elected with her mindset, with her mentality and her intentions, I think we could really see some positive steps from the police towards an end of the end of cannabis prohibition. Ultimately, we're not going to see the politicians turn in our favour. They're not going to wake up tomorrow and go, oh my God, these oppressed people and their human rights and their needs. They don't give a shit about that. They really couldn't. But the police, because of the nature of sort of protect and serve, and yes, it has mutated and it is metastasized into something that's kind of carcinogenic in our society, that's kind of vicious and divisive. The nature and the reason as to why policing was founded was by Sir Robert Peel, and he founded the Bobbies as a way to protect the people from the oppression of the state, using the army to deal with social issues, to deal with then trade movements, to deal with people that organised en masse and went, no, we want to take this. So that's just what the war on drugs is now, is just the perpetuation of this. They found an extension of that power, and that's how they've marginalised and divided communities. I mean, you even look at reform through the community of people that want to legalise, or the activists and organisations that want to legalise or decriminalise or reschedule or whatever else. There's so many different broken down subgroups within that it becomes controllable and maintainable. So they fear the fingers coming together in a hand to make a fist. And this is one of the ways that we fix that problem, is if then the police from the top down kind of go, we're going to look the other way, kind of know what you're doing, but we're not going to enforce it. If we end up with a system like they did, or they currently have in Amsterdam, for example, we could flourish as a community and as a culture. We could have an opportunity to get out of that gate, whereas corporations got out the gate 10, 15, 20 years ago in some places, you know what I mean? So this is very exciting to me. It's very exciting, but I just wanted to kind of explain as to why I might appear slightly, because that was an hour and 45 minutes and 15 more than I was expecting, and I sprinted around to get back to you wonderful people. But I even had a chance to make coffee. I half-boiled the kettle. Shows how much I wanted to come here and speak to you fine folk on 420. Yeah, it's great to see adult conversations happening everywhere. In terms, yeah, so a lot of the diverse subjects that were brought up in this. I mean, it was recorded. I'm not sure by whom, so but hopefully I will be able to be given access to that. If so, I will be putting it up on obviously all pages and platforms, because the topics that were brought up were really interesting, and it was great to see a consensus of different classes and different backgrounds, kind of in opposition to this vulture capitalism that's occurring. You know, as they're flying over the corpse of cannabis prohibition, waiting to pick apart the bones of it and get all that juicy profits for themselves. And it's great to see academics recognize that. It's great to see people from around the world. Sunil was from America, so had a great deal of knowledge around certain states' policies and plans and whatever else. And then Yuandi came from a purely academic sort of background. And it was just great to see the commonality and the intersections in conversation was kind of around, well, it's human rights. We deserve this. It's ours. And it was a great opportunity to speak to, I suppose, what I'm hoping is quite a diverse audience. Obviously, the Green Party are known to be quite diverse and liberal, I suppose, in their ideals, but they're still quite behind the times with the terminology that they're using in terms of their approach to the war on drugs, or rather to ending the war on drugs. So it was good to kind of have their ear and to potentially plant some seeds that hopefully will grow into little weed trees that will get a little high in the process. But we'll see what occurs, because if she gets elected, I mean, if others are in that position, I mean, there are some progressive PCC candidates. Unfortunately, there's not really any in Durham currently upcoming. We're gonna have to, I guess, vote for the least worst and hope to negotiate a good position with them. But there are other regions where there are independent candidates, there are green candidates, and there are other people that have the potential to really do some damage in their institutions from the top down. If they can set deprioritization, as Mike Barton did in Durham, they can get their chief constable to agree to deprioritization as they did in Durham. They can then set the public interest argument. They can then bring in de facto decriminalization as a combination. This is what we saw from Durham Constabulary for a small period of time before, unfortunately, Ron's untimely death and Mike Barton's retirement. The plant deserves better. Humanity deserves better. But the divisive nature of all of this is part and parcel. It's the tactic. It's their motive operandi. You know what I mean? It's what they're always going to do. Is they subdivide. They find an oppositional problem, and rather than taking it on and going, let's take on cannabis, they can chip away at it. They can break us into narrow subcategories and go, right, here's industrial hemp. This is medical. These are the stoners in the druggie den. I mean, you look at the narrative that's slowly happening with certain entities and organizations in the UK. I mean, you are going to see within the next few months, I'll put a bet on this somewhere, people coming out and saying we need medical cannabis clubs. You are going to see this occurring because they are controlling the narrative. They're manipulating what is occurring to set a marketplace for them so that they can channel through all of the millions of people that consume cannabis freely and do whatever they already choose to do with it every goddamn day, and say the only entry to legality is through this narrow doorway. And then they get to sell you a ticket along the way. They then go, oh, you'll need a license for this, or you need permission for this. We need your data for that. It's all going to get into a very muddy system, and that's the same perpetuated by all the parties. Even the Green Party was still saying, oh, we want to legalize all drugs. Well, see, you can't legalize what isn't illegal. What you need to do is end the oppression of people who choose to do whatever they want to do with these substances, as long as they're over 18 and as long as they are not harming themselves or others. You know what I mean? And the way we avoid that is not by criminalizing the substance and going to war with it. You educate the individuals. You know what I mean? It's even by labeling. So back in the day, like sort of moonshine and rogue brewers during alcohol prohibition, just labeling the goddamn jugs was harm reduction, was enough. Whereas that doesn't occur with most of the compounds wherever you go. If you buy heroin or you buy cocaine, you don't know its percentage, you don't know its purity, you don't know the adulterants in it, you don't know anything about it. Whereas what we then did to reduce the potential harms of alcohol and the risks associated with that is we created a legal structure for it. We created a regulated system of accountability, of traceability of products. Stop scratching. Sorry, my cat's scratching my floor. Which problem? See, we need to create this this accountability within cannabis, because ultimately a lot of the mass market produced stuff that is occurring in the UK is done with human trafficking, is done with people literally locked in grow rooms, modern day slavery. You've got kids being weaponized into county lines, and all of these are consequential problems of prohibition. These are not consequences of drugs, so we need to change that narrative. It's not about legalizing. Legalizing gives them the free reign to create their industry and profit from us. Where do you think that money's going to go? They're going to hide it in shell companies and corporations off out in the middle of the Caymans or wherever. Whereas what happens now, you buy weed from your local dealer, he goes home and he buys his kids dinner. We are going to be worse off under legalization unless we create a model that is representative of true legalization, the idea of something that means that every act of it is legal. Whereas legalization under the legalese means that they get to create a legally restrictive system through a punitive system, which means that if you fuck it up, if you do something that they don't like, they can fuck you up. They can raid you, they can arrest you, they can detain you because you don't have the right piece of paper that says you're allowed to do it. It's a classist system. It's a perpetuation of the same capitalist intention that is ruled over humanity for hundreds of years now. Whereas we're on a point of global knowledge and experience with not just cannabis, other entheogenic compounds and other drugs, that these are tools. These are tools that can fine-tune our perception and our intelligence and our consciousness. Are you trying to get my attention? You can sit up here if you want. Sorry, he's not used to seeing me do 2 lives in a row, so I imagine he's probably wanting his dinner. Go on then, jump up, because I'm trying to record a live here. Sorry, buddy. Anyway, yeah, I've forgotten what I was talking about, so I'm going to read some comments. Happy 420, Lawrence. It seems many years, 5 years, constantly. Depends again what we mean by legal. Legal under a Canadian system, a Prohibition 2.0, a legally restrictive, over-regulated system, I think is inevitable. Inevitable. The corporate pressure now, the lobbying groups, the manipulation of data and information, and the attempt to perpetuate medical cannabis as a thing. The idea to whitewash and to destroy and edit out an entire culture and communities' contributions towards the knowledge base of this. It's not just academics that suddenly went, oh, this thing. It's the thousands of people that already utilized it, that cultivated it, consumed it, that passed on that first-hand experience and that knowledge, that healed each other. You know what I mean? That created these economies and these communities that thrived, that still thrive now, even under the oppression of prohibition. And they will continue to do so even under the oppression of legalization. The unregulated market is still far larger in Canada and most of the American legal states because they have not legalized. They have created a narrow funnel for corporate interest, for rich middle class to upper class white folk to come in and go, we want to buy this now. They're coming in from finance, they're coming in from legal, they're coming in from the vape industry, they're coming in from wherever else to seek the profits, the serious potential profits that are in cannabis. And they're going to win this anyway. This is what I've just said on the Green Party Live that I've just taken part in, is we need to stop trying to look at the idea of taking on the monolith. It's already goddamn there. What we need to do is be subversive, and we need to dig through this and weaken the foundations of it. So they own the media, and they're representing the narrative as they choose fit. There are campaigns and activists and events that have occurred in this country that should have been covered in the mainstream press, that are in the national interest, but they are not in the vested interests of the people who own the media. They're not in they are all part of the same small group and cabal of individuals that are seeking to tie up all of the loose ends and make sure that they've medicinalized and pharmaceuticalized all of these compounds so they can perpetuate the restrictions and the harms of prohibition, but be able to wave the flag and say that, yeah, we're pro this now, we want to help you now. When it's not, it's just another narrowing of access. It's just another way to create legal restrictions and prevent the people from accessing compounds and substances that have the potential to irreparably, in a wonderful and magnificent way, change their lives, to awaken them to themselves, to give them a glimpse of themselves, to heal themselves, to, if they choose, enrich themselves. This is the power of this plant, and to think that the same people that have oppressed us for centuries should be given the keys to the cannabis kingdom, I think is absurd. It is inevitable, as I say. It's probably a lot quicker than 5 years in this country. We're probably looking at 5 years the European Union's going to go, and that'll be the largest cannabis trade bloc in the world. Well, until China decides to pull its finger out. I mean, they're quietly patenting everything and owning as many of the technological patents for cannabis-derived technologies as possible. They're the world's largest cultivator of hemp for industry, and as soon as they figure out, I don't know, whatever it is they're seeking to figure out, they will understand the true potential for having an adult consumption market. I mean, look at Mexico's about to go. Mexico is huge. It's like 4 times the population of Canada. Where do you see what that market does? Reparations are required, indeed. If there is to be a commercial industry, part of that should be to recompense the people who built that fucking industry, whose blood, sweat, and tears and literal life spent behind bars allowed for this. That's what needs to be recognized. It's one of the points I brought up on the previous live, is that we need a Truth and Reconciliation Committee, similar to what happened in post-apartheid in South Africa. Is we need everyone to kind of come together and say, well, this is what happened, bring all the evidence, all the information, and speak truth, so that everyone can kind of look at this and go, fuck, this is actually what happened. Because we all, myself included, everyone has this limited perception. We can only ever see so much. Every time you move your focus, you lose perception of something else. It's the limitation of human experience. But collectively, if we sit down together, we can notch it up until we see that rounder picture. And already there are parts and swaths of communities and subgroups of culture that are denied a voice in this, that are denied part of the conversation, again, part of the human trafficking and the human slavery argument. That needs to be brought up more, that needs to be addressed more, because that's what's one of the main perpetuators of criminality within this. Those organizations that then grow en masse then end up pumping those products into an area where they just knock 500 quid off a box. They're happy to take the hit on that to own that market. In 2 or 3 cycles, they own that market. They've put every home grower out of business. They've put everybody else that has dealt and ran that community in that area infinitum, like all time previous, out of business. And they're the ones who deserve protection, because if they've done this without violence, if they have done this without being antisocial, without being a detriment to their community, then they should be rewarded for it, recompensed for it, and given the first opportunity at licenses, at running coffee shops, at establishing clubs, at creating businesses that will create direct profit for those communities, not for conglomerates and all of these big fish eating the little fish until there's like 5 sharks that are going to own cannabis and nobody pays tax for it anywhere, and they just siphon all of this goddamn money from the same communities that they've already spent a century destroying. There you go, there's a Thai trade for you. Happy 420 bong bong. Cool name. Yeah, we need normalization. Normalization of cannabis has to occur, and that comes through truth. That comes through your little old lady being able to say that she smokes it, she enjoys it, she grows it, she bakes with it, does whatever, to everybody from every ethnicity and every marginalized group being able to speak their truth of cannabis without risking their home, their job, their children, their freedom. You know what I mean? That's the only time the war is going to be over, is when everyone can speak as freely of cannabis as they can with alcohol. Look at every morning radio. I mean, Jesus, if I listened to Radio 1 the morning that the pubs reopened, and all it was just an endless perpetuation of alcohol culture, and it was so hyper-normalized. That's for over 18s. 5% of all global deaths occur from alcohol consumption, as comorbid conditions that occur from consumption of alcohol, rather, I should say. Yet, that's then that hyper-normalized. Yet cannabis is still this druggy in a hoodie, that super skunk, you know, it's going to make you go loopy and shit. There is just so much disinformation, there is so much bullshit and so much crap that is in the way that is preventing a rational conversation from occurring. And the stigma of that prevents so many goddamn people having an opportunity to have a voice at that table. So you can see why those powerful fucks and their few little associations, I say little, their few associations and organizations are ruling everything, because they know business, they know government, and they know the corruption and the cronyism of capitalism, and they know how to play that goddamn game. Whereas the people that are advocating for cannabis with their true intentions, they're not, myself included, unfortunately, as well organized as we need to be. We don't know their world, and this is why the war on drugs is a classist war, because they win from the get-go, because they study law. They get to learn about the art of rhetoric and using language to manipulate people, using legalese and ways to obfuscate answering questions. You know, this political chatter and bullshit. Do you know what I mean? That pervades the upper classes, and it's a way to obfuscate the truth that their affluence is built off the absence of everybody else's shit. And cannabis is the resource that gives everybody the opportunity to readjust the scales. And you know what I mean? It gives us that opportunity to empower the people, enrich the people, for them to grow their way out of austerity, for them to grow their way out of poverty, for them to finally have prosperity, have an opportunity, and most of all, have fucking hope. And that's the main thing that's goddamn missing, is hope. Oh. Right, we have some horsebanger as well, which I'm going to roll into a nice little joint. Got some lovely glass tips that I forgot about. Big up the High Rollers, was it High Roller World Cup? The influencer pack or whatever it was that the centers had these Marley tips in, and they are sweet. They are such a lush size. Looking forward to rolling up with this thing. Futures, I really hope we don't need to take up arms. I'm a pacifist by my nature. You know, I'm a vegan. For anyone that knows me will be able to attest to sort of my desire for passivity. I may speak very passionately, may come across quite aggressive at times, but I do not believe that inflicting violence upon another for their ignorance, whether it be willful or unintentional, is a viable response to it. I know obviously it's a joke, but I'd still like to reiterate that to the wider audience, I guess. But there needs to be direct action. There needs to be more to this than us just being corralled into a, here you go, you can have 40,000 of you in a park at Hyde Park on 420, well, in normal years. Or that they can go, okay, you can have your little club and you can hide away. When alcohol culture is everywhere, every bank holiday, every advert, all the supermarkets fill with the front of it is so interwoven into our culture. And so is cannabis, but cannabis is hidden and it isn't represented. And we need to get to that fucking point. And until we get to that goddamn point, they're going to continue to own everything. Because I think, actually, to answer my earlier question about what China's waiting for, they're probably worried of the social implications of people consuming cannabis because of what it does for neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. The idea that it creates new neurological pathways, ergo it allows for new thoughts, new novel thoughts, creative ideas in a very restrictive communist system that is trying to implement a social class system through technology and a citizenship score. That's pretty fucking terrifying to them, that if the population en masse could consume this thing and kind of start to really question stuff, sit around with a few people and discuss these commonalities, feel comfortable enough to question the system and the status quo. The rest of the world, including the West, are in line to do a similar thing, just through different means and different technologies, because data has become more valuable than oil. That is the new shackles. They will never come to you and lock you in a cage anymore because they don't need to. We do it to ourselves. We're willing to sit there and bombard ourselves with adverts and be good little passive consumers. And that's all they fucking want. And cannabis is, what is it, the Bill Hicks quote, and he says that weed doesn't make you lazy. It's just when you smoke weed, you realize that a lot of the shit that you do just isn't worth doing. You know, it just isn't worth it, sort of thing. And you question, like, okay, why am I going to work for this 9 to 5 in this shit, I don't know, supermarket or whatever? You hate your job, you hate your role, you're not getting any growth from it, you're just passing the time, really. You could actually save and say, look for another role and advance yourself. And again, it's one of the things that cannabis kind of gives you, is that introspection, is that metacognition, that overview of yourself, and you get to then kind of question it. You see it all the time with people that are couch locked, like kind of, they may look like there's no going on, but in their head they're like, why the hell 5 years ago I did this thing? And they start to question all this stuff, and it starts to allow for genuine human growth. Ooh, buzzing. This horse banger is pretty good. Shout out Next Level Flavors, much appreciated, brother, much appreciated. Oh, I've been looking forward to smoking this lovely flower. Oh my god. It's like a soft fruit, but there's kind of like a pepperiness to the side of it. I feel like one of those pretentious guys when they swizzle wine. Yes, grapes. A little bit of mango, maybe. It is a cascading effect. I mean, we've seen this already with Washington and Colorado going in 2012. That kind of stuff. I suppose you go back even further. I suppose 1996 with California pushing for medical marijuana, and there was it 215 or 64, whichever prop it was that went first. That kind of started that snowballing, and you're seeing in America with the states falling faster and faster as they recognize the economic potential in it, but then some of the states actually recognize the disparity in policing. They recognize the wealth inequality and the perpetuation of this social harm and injustice that is occurring because of the war on drugs. And it doesn't just happen with cannabis. Once that happens, boom, look what you're seeing with entheogenic compounds. Now a lot of places, there's hundreds of bills across various regions in America that are seeking to decriminalize or legalize psilocybin, other entheogenic compounds, and all natural psychedelics. You've then also got a lot of bills that are pushing to decriminalize personal use of all drugs. Once they've recognized and they've suddenly gone away from their image of cannabis consumers, some lazy, some degenerate, somebody who's unintelligent, who doesn't give a fuck about anything, will steal, is immoral, etc. That was their image kind of thing. And once they've then seen this industry and they've looked around and they've seen that everybody can be a cannabis consumer and even themselves maybe partake, they're kind of going, oh shit, we're wrong here. And then maybe we're wrong about other things. And then once they start to accept these dirty hippies, these druggies, these wrong-uns who before they would discredit their word or discredit anything they would say because to them it wouldn't have any merit because they were just a druggie. Whereas now they're going, all right, you smoke weed, but I'm going to listen. Do you know what I mean? And once we get to that point, we bring together the marginalized voices. We give people an opportunity to fucking speak about this, to actually first and foremost empower the people to speak their truth. And I think that's the ultimate thing that needs to happen here, is we need to be in a safe space internationally for the people who already exist within the culture that have consumed cannabis for 20 years but have had to hide it because of their job, or have to hide it because of their wife or their mother or whoever else. Once we can all be truly proud of who we are, and we can not have to internalize this hatred and kind of internalize the idea that we're bad people for what we do, that we're somehow criminals, and that we'd rob people and we'd harm people. And it's just a bullshit narrative. It is just entirely a bullshit narrative. And they're quite aware of this. They've known this since, like, think of the John Ehrlichman quote from Nixon in the late 60s. If I know what you got it, I'm just going to shout it out to you because it is just always worth mentioning this quote. So John Ehrlichman was Nixon's primary advisor for drugs during his first bout. So the Nixon campaign in 68 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night in the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. So it's never been about prevention of harm. It's never been about, the demon drugs and the moralizing arguments they use. It's always been about social control. It's always been about a way for the status quo, the elite, the powers that be, to maintain their stranglehold on the rest of humanity. And cannabis, in its nature, seems to be so multifaceted and almost, I suppose, describable as conscious in the way that it is interacting with modern society, with what we're seeing with, it starts with a little bit of legalization here, like I said, trickles down then through all these other progressive drug policies, but then actually you start to see less hate crimes, you then start to see less racism, you then start to see these communities start to address other issues. Once they start to hear the marginalized voices, it opens the floodgates and the doors, it lifts that veil so that they can see beyond their narrow little worldview that is then echoed back to them through the little black mirrors we carry in our hands, or the ones that are all around us, that are bombarding us with the establishment's news, the establishment's views, their ideas, their concepts, their philosophies, as they try and shove it down our fucking throats. Then there's all these other cultures and communities that are so diverse and so abstract and wonderful that are just not part of the narrative. So, like a lot of people, I'm just turned off by mainstream television, by a great deal of Hollywood, by a great deal of what is produced, because it's simply there to perpetuate narratives that glorify things like subservience to things like the fucking monarch. You know what I mean? To the idea of giving ruling elites or giving anybody a kind of power over your consciousness. I mean, yeah, there is an idea that we should bring people together to decide what is for the better good, but that should be influenced on knowledge, on direct information, not on ideology, and especially not for corporate interest, which is what we've seen for the past forever. Big up, Simon. How are you keeping? I've lost my mouse. There it is. Yeah, look, I get that's why they say tax and reg, and it makes sense because it would need to be. Anything that you commercialize would need to be anyway, but it does not need to remain as a scheduled substance. Cannabis should be dealt with the same as tobacco or as alcohol. They are not scheduled in this country because if we looked at them through the lens of the schedule, they would both be Schedule 1 Class A. And so they can't do that. So because of the hypocrisy, because of the system that they've created, they can't glimpse it. Because if they actually have to look at it in the light of day and use the microscope of knowledge that they have today in terms of knowing about the endocannabinoid system, knowing about its multitude of therapeutic benefits, knowing about the potential environmental and technological potential of this plant, they can't then go back to, oh, well, 70, 80 years ago, we thought that this and this and that. And it's like, no, it's bullshit. There's no evidence for it. It was based on bigotry, hatred, racism, intolerance, classism, and warped ideology of it being sinful to be high, while these people got fucked up and drunk all goddamn day, every day. So look at the Houses of Parliament. They'll stand there at the pulpit and go, no, these drugs are dangerous. They have 12 subsidized places within the Westminster area that they can get access to alcohol. What a fucking hypocrisy and joke. If they had the same access to cannabis, the landscape of politics in this country, the shape of this country would be vastly different. Take it easy, Steve. It's weird because the Tories are going to end up pushing for legalization for medical cannabis and for medical entheogenic substances. We're already seeing this narrative being created. We're already seeing the same people who invested in cannabis in the early days invested in quotes medical psychedelics. So it's becoming a very difficult system to navigate because you are going to see a great deal of people that want to see cannabis legalized voting for the Tories if they come out and say that we want to legalize. It'll be a hella restricted model. It will be like Canada on fucking steroids, and people will still vote for it because they will want anything rather than nothing. And I think that this is part of the thing that needs to occur with, say, the Green Party, with the Northern Independence Party, with any other organization or entity out there that wants to have a serious goddamn conversation about this, that actually wants to look at the evidence base that is out there and wants to figure out what is best for the wider community, for everybody, not just cannabis consumers, because the absence of cannabis is it's like an ecological environmental hate crime. Do you know what I mean? We have issues with climate change, we have problems with deforestation, desertification as a direct consequence of the absence of cannabis from our industry. I want to mention the health consequences of not having cannabis in our diet. Oh, I rolled that in way too far. Ooh, can't pat that down, it's glass. Not the smartest thing I've done today, but probably not the dumbest either. Some lovely do-si-do. I do love a bit of do-si-do. It is a very tasty strain. Right, cultivar, sorry. I'm trying to use the correct terminology. Leaf over here. Dude, been saying that for a while, Futures. Been saying that for quite a while. In fact, it was one of the comments that I just made in the Green Party Drug Policy Live that I just taken part in that we need a kind of a sense of pride. We need to be out in numbers, true numbers, to show each other the strength And once millions stand up and people can see those others and they can fly their freak flag, to borrow a phrase from a past movement, then we can get together, we can gather, we can get into these communities, we can organize, and we can create space for progressive conversations that can then tackle the monoliths of power, that can then give us an opportunity to build a better future for all of us, instead of us being given the crumbs of whatever it is that they leave us with, you know? Evening, it's Sonzi. How are you doing? Yeah, if they were to create a legalized model, it would be so bastardized, it would be so cobbled together, and they would miss so many points of it that it wouldn't stand. The only reason that they would produce it and create it is if for a short space of time they could make a killing on it. So if we look at Canadian legalization, occurred at a similar time when the companies were then allowed to be able to float on the stock market. Some companies got around this by floating on other foreign stock markets. So then what happened is the legislators got into bed with the companies, so that then when the companies went to the stock exchange and they went public with the signing of the new legislation, the companies' prices went through the fucking roof. There was this huge bubble that you can plot 2018 of the amount of money that was pumped in and then dumped straight out. The same goddamn thing's happening here. If you look at the London Stock Exchange, September of last year was given permission and created effectively a new index to house, air quotes, medical cannabis companies. And we've already seen, I think, five go so far, and you're going to see a flood of them. Once they're in position where they can put the companies on there, they're invested in them. As soon as they announce legalization, where do all of these hedge funds go? Where do all of these rich people go? Cannabis is going to be legal. Let's buy into this shit and make some money. So they'll pump and dump into these stocks. So that's what they're building for, is that payday. That's all they care about, is goddamn money. Money and more power. So if while they're doing that, they can then build the regulatory framework, if they can be the gatekeepers by saying that you can't get a license unless you go through us, if you don't join our little association, if you don't join our gang and pay your 25 grand a year, then you don't get to know. You don't play. You're not welcome here. Do you know what I mean? And that's what's happening. And I've been screaming about this for years, and it's kind of nice to have the vindication of seeing what's occurring, but at the same time, it's deeply frustrating that that nothing was done in that time. Do you know what I mean? But ultimately, I think that we will create a system in opposition to this, really, and we will be empowered not by money, not by the potential for stocks in the future, not by any of that shit, but by the hope and the truth of this plant, by its true potential, and the hope that it gives to the people for a better fucking future. That's where we're going to win with this, man. That's the long plan. I know a lot of you guys that have obviously followed me for a while and watched my shit, some of you think I'm hella pessimistic. I'm not. I'm a fucking diehard optimist. I really am, but I'm also well in fucking formed. But I believe that that's the only way we're going to win this, is through education, is through knowledge, is through sharing that information and empowering each other by lifting each other up instead of pushing each other down. We are not crabs in a bucket. They've made us think that we are, but we are not that spiteful. We're not that simple. We want to see a better world. We're just trying to figure out how the hell we get there. And I can't tell you the path, but I can tell you that we walk it together. Getting hella cotton mouth. Been talking since 7 o'clock, man. Hope you enjoy the sound of my voice, folks. I suppose you wouldn't be here if you didn't, actually. I'd like to reiterate, happy 420. Happy 420. For people that didn't catch in at the start, you're going to have to watch it again, really. Although I do want to show you this real quick if you haven't seen it already, folks. This is the Waldo page, as we were talking about before, although I have been sent some information that suggests that 420 arose culturally, I think is what I was going for there, previous to this. But it's still a cool website to check out for resource and sort of information. Wanted to actually shout out as well this week's Last Week in Weed on the simpalife.com. Up to issue 19 now, folks. Done pretty well with this. I'm quite happy. In this, we discuss a Las Vegas man flew to Dubai and ended up with pancreatitis, ended up in hospital, and they did a random blood test. They were doing blood tests and urine tests, and they found THC in the system, so they rang the police. He is currently detained in his hotel and trying to figure out what the hell's happening. Interesting story to read up on. This came up quite recently. Don't know if you guys are aware. Pulse Today, which is a leading publication for GPs in the UK, which was launched back in the 60s. They wrote on that was published an article that was joint written by the British Medical Association and the Royal College of General Practitioners, where they basically advise against CanCard, and they speak of their concerns about it. Very much worth a read. And then there is this 100 MPs and peers are calling for greater access to, air quotes, medical cannabis. Definitely worth reading again to try and understand what's potentially going to happen and what's going to come in the near future. The thing I did want to shout out is if you haven't listened to any of the podcasts that also far, guys, you can find them all at thesimpalife.com/podcasts, and all of them are on this nice handy little play here. It's just recently been updated, so it's got everyone, or it should have everyone. For some reason, it's put them in a weird order. But there you go, that's every episode from 0.5, the inception. We've had some pretty amazing guests so far. We've had Callie Seaman was brilliant, Mike Barnes was great fun as well. I mean, all the guests have been great. But to have such a diversity of like Neil Woods, a former police officer, an undercover cop who was at the front line of the war on drugs for many years, to have him on and speak of his experience was brilliant. Someone like Tony Bevington was truly an amazing guest. He just had me and Macca in awe for forever. Peter Crykant, he's a SNP candidate at the minute, is a candidate to be a Scottish Member of Parliament, and he runs a overdose prevention van, giving out clean needles and a safe space for people to inject in Scotland. Great project. Who else we've had? Fiona Gilbertson does some amazing work with recovering justice, really worth checking out. George Charlton, powerfully inspiring man, swears a lot, but he punctuates his points and he really gets his shit across. Definitely worth a listen. Gary Hughes from the Chill Rooms, and last week we've just released Clara Herb from Herb & Co. Brilliant listen, and yeah, I think you guys just check it out. Do also want to announce, I suppose, since it's 420, I'll be recording with Tommy Chong, the legend that is Tommy Chong of Cheech and Chong fame, on the 27th, so we'll be releasing that the following Monday. I'm really excited and looking forward to having the opportunity to speak with someone that I consider to be an icon in this, someone that is a true legend, someone that I found quite inspiring in terms of the way that he has fought through his life, through the way that he brought sort of cannabis as a narrative towards the mainstream, through film work and through other sort of things, and how his sort of characters gave voice to, like I said, to cannabis consumers, and allowed me to see a commonality on a platform that otherwise I didn't quite see cannabis consumers being represented. So I'm hella excited for that one. What else are we looking at? I want to show you this as well. Don't know if you guys know, Durham City Cannabis Club will be looking to put on an event on July 18th. We're still finalising and working out details before we announce anything at the minute. I just wanted to give people an opportunity to consider saving the date. It is a Sunday this time, whereas all of our other previous events have been a Saturday. I just wanted to give people a bit more of an opportunity to come to the event. We're going to try and make it really as chill as possible, as relaxed as possible, because we all just want that space to socialize, to come together, to consume, to have a smoke, to catch up, because we haven't seen each other for going on 14 15 months at this point. It's been so difficult to be so detached from the cannabis community. We're back? Yeah, we're back. So I think that is the ultimate thing that we need here, is we need to reconnect, we need to reconvene, as it were, and figure out our next steps forward. And I'm looking forward to playing my part, as always, with that, however it may go. Happy 420, Bud Nation. Alicia King, happy 420. Sorry, the font that's come up with and how small it is on my screen, it's a bit difficult to read. How did the Green Party thing went really well, thank you very much. I kind of got a little bit impassioned, but people seem to enjoy it as usual. Covered a lot of diverse subjects, and yeah, it was really good. I'm hoping to get access to the recording to, like I say, be able to put that up on all usual platforms. Exactly that, DBT. Education is key. Start by educating the government and the police. Yeah, everything is education. Without education, we will not get any goddamn where. We will not have an opportunity to do anything, to make a lasting impact, because any steps we take that are taken in ignorance will take us further from the path that knowledge would have taken us on. That if we were informed of its environmental impacts, of its industrialization, when it's done in the wrong way, rather than going, yeah, free the weed, it does this, it does that, and it'll help the environment, but then giving it over to these huge warehouses that actually create a larger carbon footprint than the carbon that they sequestered, that will then actually pump in carbon to improve yield. It goes against what the other potential benefits of mass industrialization could give if we then hand it over to the wrong people, or we allow those people to remain misinformed and to lead us down that path. So yeah, education, knowledge, and most importantly, truth, openness, and transparency. Those are the things we need. We don't need people patenting novel compounds. We don't need them patenting synthetic cannabinoid profiles, which is exactly what they are all goddamn doing. They are seeking to own nature while criminalizing us from daring to do the same. Indeed, Eleanor. The endocannabinoid system it's the largest regulatory system in the human body. It ranges from everything from respiration through to reproduction, and we're really starting to we scratched the surface now. We're only what about 30 years since the discovery of the endocannabinoid system, and in this time the kind of opposition that they have faced from academics, from scientists, from the medical establishment has been a hell of an uphill battle for them to even accept that this thing exists, let alone be able to take on board the potential overarching nature of it, and the fact that actually if you fix this one thing, it kind of helps fix and sort everything else. I mean, there's ways to supplement our endocannabinoid system that are non-cannabinoid based. They don't need to be phytocannabinoids. They don't need to be synthetic cannabinoids. Regulation of our ingestion of omegas 3 to 6 and eating in the correct balance will help actually promote things like anandamide and other endogenous cannabinoids that help regulate and run these systems. You know, being healthier in general helps then regulate the system, which then in turn helps regulate you, and it's more nuanced, and I think that's something that the establishment is missing. They're used to an idea of single pill, single symptom relief, come back if it gets worse and I'll give you another pill for the other symptom, rather than going, actually, you've got this condition, here's a way to tackle it. And that's what raw FECO gives people an opportunity to do, full extract cannabis oil, with its full spectrum of all cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, even with the fats and the lipids, because of the way that helps oils transfer through an ingested system, can actually then increase potency and maximize its uptake throughout the system. So there's still far much more. I mean, you look at the argument around the entourage effect. The medical establishment and all the rest of them are just not willing to talk about the entourage effect. They don't want to accept it as a consensus science because they want single compounds. They want to be able to patent them, create products, and make a killing from maintenance drugs. They don't want to empower the people and go, here you go, here's some seeds and go figure it out. That's the last thing they want. They don't want to lose a consumer. You've got to remember, globally, we don't have a health industry. We have an illness industry. Well, people don't make money for the establishment, for the medical industrial complex. Ivanhoe, happy 420. Nuremberg, then proper change. Nuremberg 2. Yeah, this was about the Truth and Reconciliation sort of committee or panel or group or however it wants to be constructed. But yeah, the Nuremberg trials were a pretty good way of dealing with the aftermath of the Second World War, and I think something similar needs to happen with the end of the war on drugs. We need to see who profited from it, who were the people that perpetuated, who were the people that were harmed by it. How do we repair those communities? How do we rebuild the lives of the people whose everything was destroyed because they dared to consume a substance that the powers that be said we don't like? Go smoke your cigarettes and get lung cancer. Go drink your alcohol and poison your liver. You know, go eat your sugar till you get diabetes and you fucking die from complications of an obesity-related illness. They're happy to do that because they can tax it, they'll take the goddamn money off you, and they'll watch you do it, because then you fall into a health system that's ever more privatized and it's ever more connected with the established elite. Governments haven't been governments for a long time. They have been the political arm of corporations. Yeah, big up Chris Aztec shouting out the 20 Beverton podcast in. If you haven't heard one, that's the best one that he's heard so far. I think my comments are a little bit behind. Big up Dom Oliver, happy 420. Oh, I'm actually really baked already. I'm quite nicely toasted, although my belly does grumble pretty hard, and I've just realised I haven't eaten today. It's been a very goddamn busy day. So much prep for these lives, been writing obviously new blogs, been doing quite a hell of a lot of work, and it's tiring, man. It is fucking tiring, but I love what I do. I really do. It's weird. I made a point when we were talking on the panel before, of saying to the PCC candidate Cleo Lake, how sort of abstract and weird the concept of me sitting and smoking a joint while talking to her on this platform and being given sort of equal footing with these academics and other people as well is juxtaposed to sort of where I was and where society was when I was in sort of my teenage years or my late teens is amazing. It's fucking it is amazing to me that I can have the privilege to be in the position that I am. I'm aware that obviously it's because I'm quite articulate. Obviously I'm aware that I'm white, and obviously I'm aware that I could be quite persuasive and a pain in the arse. And I think a lot of the people I've dealt with within the establishment and within authority and policing institutions recognize the potential benefit of somebody like me to the local community. I am not a threat. I am not an enemy of the establishment per se. I am pro-community. I am pro-culture. I'm pro-dealer. I'm pro-healer and leader. I'm pro getting the people off their goddamn knees and empowering them to be able to cultivate their way out of poverty. And that's not going to happen from a Canadian 2.0 version of legalization. They'll never, no oppressor will ever give you the tools to free yourself from slavery. And that's kind of where we are right now, is they don't want to give us a resource that we could cultivate and generate billions of pounds of profit in local communities. They don't want to see that. They can't allow their classist system that's taken hundreds of years to enforce and to create to collapse. You see them at the pulpit when they're stood in Parliament and they go, "We must protect our economy." That isn't yours or mine economy. It's not to do with our little bit of tuppence in the bank or whatever fucking cash you got hidden down the back of the couch. Do you know what I mean? They're talking about long-term investments. They're talking about the things that the revolving door of government they don't question. I mean, the UK being the world's largest the world's second largest arms dealer, for example, the world's largest cannabis cultivator, the world's largest dealer in legal opioids and legal cocaine. When you really start to look into the more nefarious and things that we're invested in and the need for the elite and the establishment to perpetuate this war, because if it ended and we all of a sudden had that resource and that ability, if we suddenly had the tools to fight back from this, that boot that's been on our fucking face for decades wouldn't be there anymore. They wouldn't have that kosh. They wouldn't have that shield to protect them. They wouldn't have that armor. They would be as vulnerable and as raw and as real as we are. And that would terrify them because they don't know anything like that. They've never faced the hardship of this. They've never lived the other side of this. They've had that fear every time there's a blue light. They've got nervous every time there's somewhere like, could they be ringing the police on me? Could they be this? You know, could I get pulled over and lose my license because I smoked cannabis last night? They don't understand the oppression, the stigma, the internalized stigma that we all kind of have, and the internalized kind of persecution in us that kind of makes us feel a victim to this system. It empowers them. When what do they actually have? They have some fraudulent legislation, some bullshit narrative laws that don't stand up in their own goddamn courts. We're seeing this now. The legal argument is falling a fucking apart. They cannot keep this narrative going. So that's why they're accelerating as fast as they can into medicinalizing medical cannabis, medical psilocybin, medical ketamine, medical DMT. No, they're just trying to deny us access to the mysterious, to the profound. They're denying us access to reset ourselves, to, to undo their indoctrination into a cultural paradigm, to be able to see the world for what it is, make our own informed decisions, and live our life accordingly. That is the greatest threat to the establishment. And that is why, in some form or another, they will always seek to criminalize the unregulated right of individuals to experience these substances. They will say that if you want access to it, you come to our clinic, you come to our club, you come to our whatever. But no, you can't do it at home. That would make you a druggie. That would make you, a dangerous person. If you wanted access, why would you not want to access here? We give you a nice space for it. It's a bullshit. It's a continuation of the control paradigm. Just because they're not then going to criminalize you for it, they'll still find another way to control it, to limit its potential for human development, for revelatory thought, for that true euphoric and ecstasy experience of just stepping truly outside of yourself. I've experienced it many times, been fortunate enough to experience it many times. This resonating power from within, this all-encompassing love for life, this connectivity to everything and anything. And that, to a bigot, to a racist, to a xenophobic, hateful individual, that's like a cure. Do you know what I mean? In an evening, they can undo a lifetime of this hatred, of this misunderstanding, of this ignorance and this bigotry. And again, that's dangerous to the elite. That's dangerous to the establishment and to the status quo. This is fucking tasty. Just a little bit peppery. Indeed, they'll take the powers that be. I mean, I already look at this. There's some of the serious investment groups that are out there. I mean, you got like Kingfisher and people like that own $1 trillion portfolios. When they start to look into this, that's when it really goes. I mean, I suppose they're already looking into this, but what I mean is that I think they're going to be the ones that are going to push this. So it's going to be the guys in suits that were like, no, hate the war on drugs, and demonizing it and going, it's anti-capitalist or it's anti-whatever, and shitting on the cultures of drug consumers. And now suddenly going to be like, well, how much money can we make? And then we can control the market if we do this. They recognize that, and they shouldn't be given that power or that opportunity to enslave us, to shackle us to, again, another mutated neoliberalistic capitalist system. We shouldn't have to live within that if we can choose not to. I mean, certain things with taxation and structure of governments, etc., are going to be an inevitability for a goddamn long time, for infinitum as far as modern man can see. But the idea of destitution, of poverty, doesn't need to exist within this system. It only exists as another control mechanism. And again, if we can find a way to end the war on drugs on our terms, if we can find a space to call for a ceasefire and create a space for us to create economies and to legitimize ourselves, to regulate ourselves, to become an entity, an economy, and an industry on ourselves, then we may be somewhere close to where the fuck we need to be. But I think we're going to go the other way first. But that's not to say that I'm too disheartened. As I said, I'm a quiet optimist, but I'm also slightly a realist, I guess. Simpa equals supreme leader. Nah, I don't need no power. I just need a voice. That's my thing. I want to be heard in some way. Not for like, oh, listen to me, look at me, look at me. I believe I have something to add to the larger conversation. I believe that I have, in some small way, I guess, a gift to be able to articulate in a way that's emotive enough and impassioned enough to make people listen, but not too much that it then turns them off. It's enough to spark curiosity and interest within subjects that they had long since thought that they had closed the door to. You know, topics and ideas that they were just uninterested or incapable of engaging with because of their own cognitive dissonance and biases. And so, yeah, I don't want, I suppose, fame or infamy. I suppose I am doing a very public platform, and why I'm creating is public facing. And obviously any increased exposure, just for me, it gets the narrative out there, it gets the truth out there, it creates these spaces for these conversations. It allows me to get invites to events like the one I've just done, to do, say, Chongas 420 on Instagram on Thursday. I think I'm recording with those guys. I just did a podcast, this really interesting podcast with an MMA fighter called Cal Pacino. They call him the Sunderland Strangler, and he is sponsored by one of the hydro shops that sponsored one of the Durham City Cannabis Club events. And quite good friends, and he mentioned sort of me and said, you need to come down. We're supposed to record like an hour, 2.5 hours in, and yeah, it was just amazing to have this chat of these two altered worlds. And I spoke on his podcast of the juxtaposition the audience will feel of, because a lot of my audience will look at him with his tattoos and his beard and sort of the shape of him, because he's a fighter in his world, of thinking, oh, coked up alky, that's blah blah, and they have that perception. And some of his audience will look at sort of myself and our community, as it were, and then kind of go druggies and dropouts and, you know, dirty hippies, etc., whatever other bullshit. And then to be able to challenge each other in a productive and constructive way and discuss various things and find that commonality and find those crossovers was powerful, man. I really look forward to being able to share that with you, hopefully next week. I will have him on the Simpa Life podcast as well in the not too distant future. we're just obviously trying to get some of the guests on that I've been trying to get for the past several weeks, but because of their schedules have been incredibly difficult. But once we get 420 out of the way, a lot of people's time frees up, so we've got some really interesting guests coming up, all from all walks of life. We're really starting to branch out to look for sort of musicians, comedians. We've got a few more sort of different academics coming in to potentially discuss things like psychedelics and their effects on neurology, their effects on potential physiology, and how different compounds can have different applications that we potentially wouldn't really consider. Obviously, the people that I've been trying to get for a while, like I said, have very difficult schedules, so we'll be trying to fit them in as and when we can. Obviously, unfortunately, Maka works full time, gives it all for the company that he works for. So I just greatly appreciate the fact that one day a week we can record a podcast, but it does sometimes limit how we can get the guest on that week. But we're working to figure it out and iron out and smooth out the rough edges. You know what I mean? But we'll get there. We're only this week will be 27 episodes we'll be putting out. So still a baby, still very much a baby. Happy 420 IG. I really do need to change the size of that font after this one and make sure I do take it down. Just like I said on the last one, I just couldn't read it, and now it's just so bold and in my face, I can't quite concentrate. That's weird though. I've just been on the live that I've just been on. It had like the 5 panelists, then the 3 people who make up the drug policy group, 4 people, and then it had like 3 or 4 pages of just guests of people, and it was quite slightly, I suppose, overwhelming really. But it's always fun to speak to a live audience. I guess you guys are a live audience, but I really felt not kind of the pressure, but the slight bit of nerves and butterflies that you get. I don't know if you've ever publicly spoke, but you kind of get this inside of you, and depending on your brain, you can either get anxious and get worried about it, or you get this weird excitement. And then as soon as you get excited for it, like in your mind and in your psyche, your body, you get an adrenaline rush, and you kind of get this ooh. And I was feeling that, waiting for my turn to speak. They put me last as to speak on the first 5 minutes that we got as our opener, and I can see why Jules kind of did it that way. Obviously, I speak quite passionately, and I build typically to a large sort of crescendo and ending of whatever it is that I'm speaking, and it was just a wonderful live. So hopefully we will be putting that, putting it up. So what else are we doing this week? Chongas 420. If you guys, I don't know if you're all on Instagram. It's weird. I've been trying to figure out how to incorporate Instagram into this live, but it's a little bit difficult with the tech that I'm using. But there is something else that I can adapt to it. So hopefully in the next coming weeks we will have Instagram. But I'll be doing an Instagram exclusive live with Chongas 420 at 5 p.m. on Thursday, and then following that I will be back here with you lovely folks on Thursday at 7 p.m. for the usual weekly live, which I haven't managed to name yet, so if you guys can help me come up with a name, I would greatly appreciate it. Right, I get 3 more minutes. Any last questions? Hit me up, because I'm done. It's been 3 hours alive, and do it a shout out again. Next Level Flavors for the Horse Banger OG. Much love. Super tasty, tight, compact, little popcorn buds. Delightful, absolutely delightful. Yeah, I'm good. The WT group has disappeared. I couldn't find Ice More community group either the other day. I don't know if they've also been removed. It's weird. I've been praising Instagram recently because it seems the algorithm has changed, or at least mine has. So on my Discover page, you can see shit ton of just cannabis content out of the 12, 15 slides, whatever it is. I would say a good 80% of them are now cannabis accounts, and cannabis accounts that I've never interacted with before. So I'm quite excited to be able to reach and branch out. But it's interesting that other people are facing this kind of loss of their pages, loss of their groups, loss of their accounts, or higher end shadow banning. I kind of feel in a certain way maybe I've lifted shadow ban. What you having for your tea? I don't know. It's 10 o'clock at night. I really need to think about eating, but I need to finish outlining a blog after this to make money to pay for food, because that's currently how I live. Is picked up a few contracts with various people. Obviously, I write for Weed World magazine, as you guys will be aware. But I'll be announcing in the next couple of weeks a few partnerships with 3 different websites, potentially 4 if I can get them a sign on the dotted line, where you will see my lovely work on their websites. You'll see little either Simpa's Corner or an Activist Corner or a special sort of blog section that is created for me to produce bi-monthly content for various outlets. And it's a way to just kind of diversify the topics that I cover and to reach out into other demographics, but also get paid for the privilege, so I can frankly eat and keep this little thing going. Happy 420, Sam. Hope you've had a good one. Hope everyone's had a good 420. Like I said, it's been a weird one this year, hasn't it? We haven't been able to gather. We haven't been able to congregate to create these events and these spaces where we can just have that moment. I don't know about you guys, but my favorite thing about organizing or attending these events is the Japanese Buddhists call it satori. It's like a brief moment of enlightenment, and it's where you step beyond yourself. So without a drug experience, you kind of lose yourself and you are just present. You just glimpse it for a few moments, and it may be somebody smoking a dab off in a little tent section that they've set themselves up, or it may be a few people just giggling away, or somebody running around. Whatever, it's just something where people are just so involved in the life and the culture and the potential of this that it resonates inside of me. Something literally elates, like the vagus nerve just fires up, and I'm just like elated by the whole thing. And to have not been able to do that today has been difficult, but it's been wonderful that you guys have chose to spend this evening with me. So I'm hella grateful as always. If you wouldn't mind sort of sharing, liking, subscribing, and helping me beat the algorithms and pushing this around. This is obviously still quite a new idea for us, running this live through this platform. It's obviously a different bit of a structure. You're used to seeing me sat on my couch, whereas now we're in the general podcast position. I'm obviously trying to figure out being able to show you guys weed again, being able to sit and roll with yous, because that's something quite a few people have said that they miss. They want to see me talking about certain cultivars. They want to see me consuming various different products. So you asked, I'm delivering. I'll be working with a few different brands and companies out there to showcase who I consider to be sort of doing it in the right way, or trying to create a space and a brand within a currently unregulated market, but trying to go about it in the right way. Thank you, Tom. Yes, I am on Patreon as well. Thank you for the shout there. If you want to check out patreon.com/the Simpa Life, we are looking to start producing some more behind the scenes content as well over the next few weeks that will be exclusively going to Patreon, before then potentially being made public a few weeks later. All of my last week in weed blogs are available as well, exclusively for patrons firsthand. There are conversations and content that goes on there where I discuss various guests, and guests can ask questions. Patreons can ask questions for my future guests. You can vote on future guests, and you can interact with me on a hella more personal level. There are various tiers, from everything from less than a cup of coffee a week to up to the higher level tiers, and everything is greatly received, honestly, because I've been doing this for 5 years now, and I've made little bits here and there with work, with blogs and with writing, etc. But it's difficult when a lot of the mainstream doesn't want to hear what I've got to say. And you know me, guys, I'm not going to write some bullshit I don't believe. I fact check everything that I produce, and I try to be humble when I'm proven to be wrong, and then add that to my knowledge base, expand, evolve, and adapt and move on. And so because of that, I don't really sell products for people, and I don't really sell very well for them. So it's been a bit difficult to maintain continuation. Whereas at the minute, we live in a very interesting time where people are starting to see the monoliths that are blacking out the sun of potential free future with cannabis and an end of prohibition. And they recognize that I'm maybe not as loony as I sound. Sometimes I am, but we usually figure that out when we get there. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. I'm knackered as fuck. It has been a wonderful evening. Like I said, do check out the Green Party drug policy anyway, because I should hopefully, fingers crossed, be helping nudge them in the right direction a bit more with some of their progressive policies, and hopefully getting on some of their PCC candidates as well, maybe potentially on a live next week. We will be seeing how that goes. It's been a pleasure as always, folks. Thank you very much for the likes, shares, for the love. Big up our one Twitch viewer all evening. I hope you are good, whoever you are. Thank you very much for all smoking along. Go enjoy the last couple of hours of your 420. I'm gonna go eat some food. I don't know, something with potatoes, Chris. I'm gonna eat something with potatoes. I'm not quite sure what though. We shall see. Don't know what I'm gonna do with them. Might mash them. Might boil them. I'm definitely not gonna bake them. I ain't got the time for that. But we'll see. Anyway, it's been a pleasure, folks. Do check out the Simpa Life on all social media. Check out thesimpalife.com for exclusive blogs, access to the podcast. You can get the audio podcast on Spotify, Google, Apple, Anchor, Podcast Addict, basically anywhere you want to look, you will find us. It's been a pleasure. I'll catch you guys later next week when I find the exit button. There it is.